Quest Nutrition. We took that from not existing to selling for $1 billion. Being an entrepreneur is getting kicked in the face every day over and over and over. And you have to respond with, thank you, sir, may I have another?
You were on the cutting edge of realizing that something is changing in the landscape of media. What are your thoughts about video games?
There is a reason the world's most successful entrepreneur is the top 20 ranked Diablo player in the world, Mr. Elon Musk.
What do you think should be done vis-a-vis AI in school?
Can I make your whole audience hate me real fast? Duct tape AI to your child's forehead. If you graduate high school and don't know how to invest, if you don't understand inflation, you are being robbed right to your face. So we are almost certainly hurtling towards a world war. It will be
because of the economy.
Because of the economy.
Tom, welcome to PragerU. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm so excited about this conversation because I think there's a lot I can learn from you. You're kind of like sitting on the cutting edge. You seem to know what's about to happen. I am confident that you're the first person that bought the iPhone and bought Bitcoin and just figured out AI right away. And so I think for many of us who are trying to figure out what the future is going to look like, I think you're just the right man I need to talk to today.
Well, very kind. Glad to be here. I wish I were the first person to buy Bitcoin. Ooh, buddy, I'd be doing a lot better. Yeah. But yes, I have a fundamental bent towards what's new. So yeah, I don't have a problem with change, integrating new things, and that has hurt me at times for sure. But also been on the long run, it's been wonderful.
Yeah. So for those who don't know you, why don't you just give us a quick background on who you are and what do you do?
All right, I will speed run this, and if there's anything you want to go deep into, we certainly can. Come to LA, go to film school, graduate, think I'm going to get the 3-picture deal. I do not. I wrote a screenplay, got turned into a feature film. That was a brutal process creatively. I met these 2 very successful entrepreneurs. They said, you're coming to the world with your hand out, and if you want to control the art, you need to control the resources. So you should get into business and get rich. I was like, that sounds amazing. Let's do exactly that. I thought it would take 18 months. It took 15 years, but it worked. And so through all of that, I learned about business. I discovered my why, like, why am I going to fight this hard? I realized the right question in life is not, what would you do if money were no object? That instead, the right question is, what would you do and love every day, even if you were failing? Because failure is the most likely outcome if you're trying something big. And that shift ended up being really important in my life. And so I anchor everything around meaning and purpose. And through that, then you have the stamina. We were talking off camera. Being an entrepreneur is getting kicked in the face every day over and over and over. Yep. And you have to respond with, thank you, sir, may I have another? And the only way to do that is if you really believe in what you're trying to do. And you have what I call the only belief that matters, that if I put time and energy into getting better at this thing, I will get better. I got kicked because I'm not good enough yet. And so now I need to get better, and I need to get better in a very specific, knowable way. And so that orientation towards, I'm doing this for meaning and purpose. I am a servant to some group of people that I'm trying to serve, that I try to make as personal to me as possible. And so that led me down several businesses. The one that ended up being very successful was Quest Nutrition. We took that from not existing to selling for $1 billion. We grew by 57,000% in our first 3 years alone in manufacturing. So that's 3 employees to 3,000, 3,000 square feet to 300,000 square feet.
A lot of kicks in the face.
More than you can imagine. Yeah, it was pure insanity, but it was awesome. And it really, this is all before social media. So this is all about operating a business. This was not me in front of a camera. And all of that was towards wanting to build my own studio one day, not knowing if I was ever going to pull it off. And so did end up selling that company. And quite literally, my last day at Quest was Monday, and my first day at Impact Theory was Tuesday. And the reason I didn't want time off was, one, it was about meaning and purpose for me. I believe the reason my company is called Impact Theory is I believe that you can impact people at scale through entertainment if you aim at a certain age group, which is 11 to 15, which is known as the age of imprinting. So I was like, okay, I want to make entertaining content for that demographic. And I've waited my whole life for this moment. And so we got right after it.
So you have a podcast,
Yes.
Which is quite successful. Many people listen to it. Who's your audience?
So the audience is somebody who a young man somewhere between 24 and 50 is our core demographic. I'll still call those guys young.
I totally caught that. I love
Yes.
that. Yeah.
And it's somebody who believes that they can do more with their life and they're actually prepared to take action, but they need to know how the world works. And so my job is to say, look, I know you're being told that it works this way. It does not actually work that way. That message that you're being given has no predictive validity. And so we're going to bring on the sharpest minds. I'm also going to comment on things that I have come to believe have high predictive validity on 5 buckets. And those 5 buckets range from politics to business and money management, the things that I think are the core to anybody's life if they want to be quote unquote successful. And so, yeah, we have over 4 million subscribers on YouTube alone and have racked up 500 million long form views, 1 billion all in when you count the shorts and all that stuff.
I think that podcasts like yours really replace what the education system has not been able to provide young people. When you talk about financial literacy, for example, where can they get that? I mean, so many schools don't even teach financial literacy. And so new media companies, edutainment media companies like yours are really a tool for so many people to understand how the economy works, how to build a business, where these are things that are sadly not being taught in schools. Not to mention the fact that you were on the cutting edge of realizing that something is changing in the landscape of media when you started investing in your podcast, right? Several years later, we now, we hear from people like Elon Musk who says, you're the media now. And it is so true that legacy media is dead. It's dead. And you came in early on realizing that it might be dying. And that people like you have something to teach the world, but you're not going to go through the old way of doing it. And so I'm curious, how did you see that? And what do you think the future of media is going to look like now that legacy media is dead? And I think we can say that with certainty.
Yeah. Will it die? Probably not, but it's going to be relegated to a certain thing. But how did I see it? So, as I like to tell people, just full confession, Quest was not me being brilliant. Quest was me being frustrated. So we were building a company before that, which was a software security company that I did not care about the product. I was just a slick marketer and I felt dead inside. Literally, I was like, I'm so unhappy. And my wife pulled me aside and said, you are now damaging our marriage, because I would come home so unhappy. And I was like, you're right. I need to do something that makes me feel alive. And Kevin Kelly had written this article about 1,000 true fans. And that idea of 1,000 true fans became my obsession. And I went in and pitched my business partners and I said, look, when we're thinking about this protein bar company, I want to do the marketing in a totally different way. It's now called social media, but it wasn't called anything back then. And so I said, I want to use that to build our 1,000 true fans. And the first rule of Quest marketing is going to be that we never talk about Quest, that we're just trying to add value to people's lives. And it's all the things that people talk about now. But back then, we're like, what? It was so weird. And it really was a guy who was like, I'm never chasing money again. I am going to do something I'm passionate about. I know I cannot guarantee success. So I'm going to love every day, even if I were failing, going back to that question. And so I was like, I want to connect with people. I want to add value to their lives. Again, I'll use words that we use now that we did not use back then, but I want to build a community. I want to be authentic, like all these things. And so we were just so early to using social media, to building a community instead of an audience, to being authentically myself. So putting out vulnerability, not trying to look cool. And all of that, because it was just, the timing was so perfect, and understanding influencers, that took off. So that's winning. And all of a sudden I can feel like something isn't working the way that it used to work. And so I start auditing the media landscape and I was like, oh, the new generation, they want to know who you are and what you stand for. So then I stepped out in front of the camera. And when I did that, it's so funny. I'll never rat him out because he's such an incredible human. But there is a very famous person who told me, don't do this. This is already played out. All the podcasts that are going to be big, they're already big. You're going to waste your time on this. And to give you an idea, when I started, there were only 400,000 podcasts in the world. There's now 6 million. So it was so early. It's a ridiculous statement to think that no one new is ever going to come on a scene. It's always going to be this high churn. So anyway, I step out in front. That ends up just taking off like a rocket ship, being absolutely incredible. And I think we're going through another turn now, which is very interesting. And so seeing how people are going to handle this moment where it's not about audiences anymore. It's about community. It's about really bringing people in. I have a video game stream that I do, which people that know me from YouTube would be very shocked. But that was my first taste of, oh, there's a level of community here that people don't yet understand that I think is coming. That's the new wave. And if you know who Kai Cenat is, I think that's the future. You're going to see more and more of that. I think celebrities are all going to become that. And so I just try to, on that, look at the data and see what's working, what's not working, who's popping off, who's trending versus already big. That's a really key thing to look at because that's momentum.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that has really changed recently is that I can't imagine voting for a politician or really investing in a community without really knowing who people are. And so these long form interviews that are now taking place, it's kind of a new thing, but I don't think it's ever going to go away. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and she said, I don't think I'll ever vote for a politician or trust someone who I don't really know. And the only way I can really get to know them is to actually hear who they really are and what they stand for, as opposed to being given a script from some PR agency that tells them what to read. And I think that is part of this destruction of the old way of doing media versus the new way of doing media, where you can pick and choose when you want to listen to something and really go deep with someone.
Agreed violently. The reason that I don't think legacy media, though, is going to go away, think of it as a format. Mm-hmm. Okay, so man, I do not mean this derogatorily, but I think that you have to answer the question, what do you do with what I call the dumb voter problem? So you have people who intentionally want to be low information voters. They want something pre-masticated. They want to be told this is the narrative. You just need to be able to parrot back these words. And part of what makes any influencer useful is people that look up to them, that watch them, are saying, tell me how I defend against my friends who view this differently. Not realizing what you're sliding into is tribalism. It feels good. And as long as you have the words to say, you feel like you have a strong place to stand from. And not understanding something of import makes people feel very uneasy. Now, I would encourage people instead to just be focused on utility. What works? So you're trying to do a thing in your life, right? You have a goal. Most people never say what it is, but if I could just get them to what I call KYG, know your goal. If you know your goal, now we can go, okay, does this belief, does this value, does this political stance, does it move me towards that goal in a way that I can measure or not? And I think most people are steering by an emotion of, I want to feel confident. And so legacy media will exist because they pre-masticate, they give you the talking points in a really easy soundbite-y fashion. So even if that goes online and moves away from traditional broadcasting, it'll be the same idea. And so this really is about anybody's invited into building a worldview that has high predictive validity. Not everybody will do it, but the option will be there. And I think your friend has nailed it for a certain type of person who clearly watches this podcast. But it isn't going to be for everybody. And that problem is unresolved.
The problem, I think, starts in education. I always say education gets us into this mess and only education is going to get us out. And that is the idea of discernment, right? How do we teach discernment? How do we have discernment, right? When I platform someone.
Do you have a definition for that?
Yes. So how do you make critical decisions that are based on truth and are likely going to bring you to the results that you're looking for? Most people will make decisions, like you said, based on how they're going to be accepted, what it's going to feel like. Or they just make a decision because they're in a rush to make a decision. So the example that I bring up why I think our school system creates humans that lack discernment is because if you think about the way our school is structured, period 1, math, period 2, literacy, period 3, chemistry, maybe, PE, right? How does life work? You've run a company. You don't have different boxes, right? Everything integrates with one another. How do you build discernment? You're able to create the fibers between math and literacy and combine everything together, because so much of innovation, so much of thinking actually lies on the intersection between different parts of our lives and different things that we understand and therefore compute. But if we teach young Americans and students in general to think in terms of boxes and not in terms of how things can overlap, plus you add all the emotional elements and the confirmation bias into everything, and how do I belong and how do I become accepted and who's going to like me if I say something a certain way, you add all of that into this big modge podge. It is no surprise why people lack discernment, because now discernment also requires courage to speak truth, right? So you might discern and you might be able to come up with the right conclusions because you're getting all the right information, but you don't have the courage to speak out. We saw that in 2020. You know that you're going to speak the truth, but it's going to hurt so much. And so you're going to naturally pull back from that. And you'll see that in communist countries where people will have the truth inside of them, but they can't really develop it anymore because there is so much fear. So that's how I define the problem with discernment. And I think when we have this new media emerging, companies like yours, companies like mine, we have a big responsibility because we are dealing with an audience that is looking and starving for truth. And the responsibility of serving them with truth is a big one. And the responsibility of the viewers to choose and earn the trust of media companies like ours is a whole nother level. Now, is it better than just having legacy media that lies to us? Probably not. But I do think this new media is probably going to come with some challenges as well, right? When Elon Musk tweets, "You're the media now," well, what does that mean for content creators like yours? You being the media now you have a big responsibility.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think so there's a book called The Revolt of the Republic by Martin Gurry. It is a fascinating look at this moment, why it happened. The concept of we have an architectural element in our brain that hungers for a set of elites to tell us, okay, these are the problems that matter. This is the right way to think about it. There really is something. And it may be simply an on-balance thing, and where meaning 60%, let's say, of people, they need that. There's a huge swath of people that don't, but there's a big swath that's crying out for, just simplify this for me and make it easy and give me a finite look on the world so that I don't have to discern what is true. You mentioned truth earlier, and I almost stopped you to say, define what's true. And I think there's a reason that Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson bogged down into madness when they tried to define it, because here's the reality. We don't know what's truth. All we have is perspective. And so if I could get people to understand the following analogy, I think is perfect to the human condition. The truth is hidden inside of a black bag. And you can reach in and feel around to see what it is. And you can have all your friends reach in and feel around what it is and try to describe it. The only problem is you're all wearing mittens. And those big mittens are your biases, how you grew up, your traumas, whatever. And you're in there trying to feel it. And you've got it's a giraffe, it's a bread box, like people making all kinds of different assessments of what this thing is. And to me, I'm like, okay, the only thing I know is the odds of me guessing what it is are very, very low. If I can get you to reach in and give me a different insight, that will help. But each of us are literally thinking inside that box, that frame of reference, the very box people to tell you to think outside of. What they're saying is don't be trapped by your own frame of reference. So no one has the right angle on quote unquote the truth. The only thing, as far as I can tell, that you can use is I know where I'm trying to end up. And when I believe this thing inside the box is the government is telling me the truth about everything, I'm all over the place. I'm crashing into the gutter. I can't make the world make sense. What's happening? Why is a cheeseburger $8? Like you're trying to orient yourself to the world, but there's something that doesn't feel right. When you go, for instance, my pet hobby horse, that the government is stealing all of your money in the form of inflation, and you don't realize that happens consciously. They have control over it, and they do it through the Fed, blah, blah, blah. We can get as much or as little into that as you want. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, I get why this is all happening. Oh, I get why they manipulate the CPI. That actually helps them with entitlements. Oh, okay, I get how they manage the debt through things like that. Cool. Now, all of a sudden, when I believe that, even though it's very uncomfortable and I don't like it at all, suddenly the world makes sense and I can steer with predictive validity. I know where this is going. So that's the way that I would really encourage people to start thinking about the world is you don't know the truth. The person sitting across from you doesn't know the truth. Together, you can sort of fumble towards something that you can run as an experiment to see if it moves you in a way where when I believe it to be this, does it actually allow me to make intelligent, efficient moves towards my goals? If yes, then odds are that you're getting closer to the truth.
I do think that truth, capital T, does exist. People may not know the truth about everything. They may not have reached the truth about certain things. But I think to say that there is subjective truth about everything, I think is dangerous and I think is wrong. I mean, I think you've reached, if you do your research and you look at both sides, ultimately you've come up with the conclusion about the economy, let's say, which we'll talk about in a moment. But to say that we don't really know the truth about anything, I mean, do you not know the truth about anything? Am I a woman? Is it true or not that I'm a woman? It's the truth. I'm a woman. And I think that once we get to narratives and language that basically says, well, we don't know the truth about anything. You have your truth. I have my truth. We all live in some sort of box and the boxes might be different. I think we walk away further and further away from clarity, which leads to chaos. And chaos leads to complete collapse.
Let me see if I can make my case for a second. Okay. So you and I agree on the outcome that we want. Questioning whether you're a woman strikes me as absurd because there's no predictive validity in assuming that you're not. When I go off all the cues that you give me, it's like, yes, you fall into a category that I call woman, very easy to deal with. And so all the confusion around that seems very unhelpful in that it does not give you predictive validity. If I legitimately don't understand which version I can get pregnant and which I can't, well, now my life is going to be a mess. But what I'm trying to get people to understand is we don't even understand physics. Like legitimately, we don't understand physics. And so given that we don't understand ground truth, at one point, we thought we did. Newtonian physics explained the motion of large bodies. We thought everything was great. But maybe people don't know this. You couldn't do GPS with Newtonian physics. That required Einstein to have his breakthroughs. Now, Einstein's physics are also limited. So what are things that we can't do today simply because we don't yet understand what's actually true? So Newtonian physics helped a lot. And so I'm going to act as if it's true because it has the highest predictive validity of any idea. Great. When Einstein comes along, though, I'm not going to reject Newton and saying, but wait, Newton's true. I'm going to go, oh, cool. Truth has a half-life. And as we learn more, we realize, oh, we can refine, and get even better. Now, if I can get people to believe that, not as a way to say, oh, it's all up in the air, we don't know anything, to say only, what has the most predictive validity? I actually don't care if it's true. I'm actually trying to get to truth. That is my end goal because the truth has maximum predictive validity. I just know, for instance, that the human mind is more likely to believe something negative than something positive. So then I go, wait a second. Or if somebody presents me like if I think something negative about myself, let me complete that thought. If I think something negative about myself, I'm going to pump the brakes and be like, it might not be true. So what belief is more likely to get me to the outcome that I want? The belief that I can get better. Okay, cool. Then I'm just going to believe in that. When you get to ground truth, you are going to have the highest degree of predictive validity. So we both want that. I just don't want people getting stuck inside their frame of reference because they believe that they've identified truth instead of realizing, no, you've been handed beliefs, you've been handed values, and those are for sure limiting your perspective in some way. And so if you can have strong convictions loosely held so that you don't become dogmatic, now you can think from first principles and do things like what Elon Musk is doing, which is realize, oh, wait a second, the cost of this battery can be dropped. Oh, we're never going to get to Mars unless we build reusable rockets. Does it violate the laws of physics? No, it does not. Therefore, it's possible. That method of thinking from first principles is what I'm trying to drive people to. And the degree to which thinking from first principles will change your life literally cannot be calculated. And I see precious few people doing it.
So I think that what you're probably saying is that there are some baselines, first principles, that you can reach the conclusion and then have the open mind to pursue science and learn more and learn what it is that we don't know yet. It's not to say that there is no baseline truth to anything.
Correct. There is baseline truth. We just don't know what it is. but we can ascertain utility. Now, this might be like this heady exercise that only matters to me, but man, so I teach entrepreneurs and they come in with all kinds of problems. And I can stand on a stage with a microphone with nobody prepping me for anything. And you can be from any industry. You can ask me any question about the hardest thing that you're dealing with. And while there's no way to give you an answer in business that you just go do and it works, but I can show you how to start the process of getting in an upward spiral of experimentation. Now, how am I able to do that, even though I don't know your industry? The answer is that I'm not trapped by a frame of reference because I'm always starting literally from physics. And I work my way up and you just start pulling on the threads. Okay, what's the limitation that you're facing? So I'll give you an example from Quest. We go into a manufacturer with our recipe and we say, can you make this bar for us? And they try to run the bar and they say, this bar is impossible to make. And go to another one. This bar is impossible to make. How is this bar impossible to make? So we asked ourselves, does it violate the laws of physics to make this bar? No, it does not. Okay. Then what would need to be true? What's actually happening? Now, the punchline of this story, the thing that ends up making me rich is that however many years ago, the government starts subsidizing corn. From this now cheap corn, you can make high fructose corn syrup. For 70 years, all manufacturers of equipment could assume that high fructose corn syrup was going to be present in the product. So all the tolerances on the equipment were designed around high fructose corn syrup. Because we did not allow somebody to hand us a frame of reference that said a bar must have high fructose corn syrup to be produced, we said, why would that be true? Which led us to, they just mean it can't be produced on this equipment. And so once we understood, if we become our own manufacturer, if we engineer our own equipment, we can do this. And now you just ask, do I want to manufacture my own equipment? And you can literally think, I'm having problems in my marriage. You can think through any problem like that, but you have to abandon this notion of, I know what is true, because what ends up happening, let's just take a husband and a wife. A husband comes in and is like, these emotions are ridiculous. I don't know what she's doing. The way that she interfaces with the world makes no sense. And so I'm just going to tell her how to solve the problem. And she is going to be offended and feel not seen and not heard. And the guy is going to think, this is the most absurd conversation I've ever been in. She is wrong. And the woman's thinking the exact opposite of that. Now, if you come in and go, yes, the human mind has architecture. The female brain is different than the male brain. And so I'm going to build my view of what this conversation is from my understanding of biology and now build up. And if I were in the grips of the biology of her brain, her neurochemistry, her hormones, odds are that I would see this from her perspective. So now, how do we get our way out of this? And there's a whole path for that, which I won't bog the podcast down in. But it's like, once you start going, I don't have a window on objective truth, even though we both agree there are foundational truths, but that's not where people start.
Right.
They just have a feeling, I'm right, you're dumb, you're wrong. And all these collisions and interactions jump from that instead of having a healthy distrust of yourself and saying, let me try to see things from their perspective and understand where we're trying to get. And then how do we navigate this with high predictability? I have to find simpler words for these things.
Well, I would say maybe you don't limit yourself, but what has been taught in the past, which really would lead me to another question, which is we are teaching kids today how to prepare for jobs that don't exist today and probably won't exist in the future. And so if you had the opportunity to consult for the Department of Education, which might be completely dismantled, but there'll be a bunch of them in different states. All right. What would you say needs to be taught in class that's not currently taught? And how would you go about it?
Okay. So this one is easy to say and will be extraordinarily difficult to do because it's hard to do in real life. The only thing that matters in life is the ability to solve novel problems. So I don't mean problems you've never seen before, though that for sure. I mean problems nobody has ever seen before. And if you have a framework with which you can assess any moment that you're in and go, okay, know my goal. Where am I trying to go? What I'm doing right now is not working. So how do I find the most efficient path from where I am over the obstacle that stands between me and my goal? So I want to get to a good college. To get to a good college, I need to do well in calculus. Okay, cool. That's one path. The other is I want to build my own business. And it doesn't matter what grades I get. What matters is that I be armed with an unimaginable set of skills that allow me to solve these novel problems. Okay, so now we're back to emotional control because you're going to be blinded by your emotions. On my tombstone, if you would be so kind, remind my wife to put, "You're having a biological experience." I want people to understand that, hey, even if it's God handed you biology, great. For whatever reason, God chose to see fit to put you in a body, and that body influences everything. So you're having a biological experience. So there is a weird truth about the human experience. There are microbes in your gut that will tell you to eat things, that will influence whether you are happy or sad. Microbes in your gut can influence your brain chemistry. That's crazy. So, hey, your body will speak to you in emotions. Your subconscious and your physical body will make you feel some kind of way. Oh, danger in the bush, you turn and run before you even realize what's going on. So when you come into any conversation, any goal that you're trying to accomplish, the first thing you get is a feeling. Now, oftentimes that feeling is overwhelm. And so what I'm trying to get people to ask is, does feeling overwhelmed help you reach your goal? If it doesn't, then stop. Stop feeling overwhelmed, which is shockingly easy to do. So emotional control.
Which is the exact opposite of social emotional learning in our schools, by the way.
Correct. So, but that is the first thing you have to teach kids. Stop trusting your emotions. You need to understand how your biology works. So teaching them about biology, getting them to think from first principles, getting them to understand the half-life of truth, that this is really about having a framework, essentially the scientific method, for discovering what has the most efficiency of moving you towards your goals. And then, of course, you're going to need basics. You're going to need reading, writing, math. Man, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, oh boy, do I wish that I'd paid more attention in math. That stuff's going to be very important. And then basic life skills, finance, the economy. Right now, if you graduate high school and don't know how to invest, that is another way the government is screwing you over. It is immoral.
Explain that.
Okay, so the government, in my opinion, has a moral obligation to give you a way to save your money that cannot be inflated. Now, if Trump is actually going to do what he says he's going to do, he is going to be pro Bitcoin is the most important, but let's just say pro crypto to round it and make it nice and easy. What makes Bitcoin interesting is it cannot be inflated. If you don't understand inflation, you are being robbed right to your face. This is one of those, I actually get mad about this because I didn't understand it for a very long time. And as I looked at it more and more closely, I was like, whoa, hold on. I'm being robbed from. Here's how inflation works. There are a certain number of things that you can buy in the world, and there's a certain amount of money. So everybody that prices those things, price it based on how much money there is. You cannot put more buying power in people's pockets by giving them more money. So if they print more money, it does not mean that you can buy more things. It simply means those things become more expensive. So when people say inflation, what they mean is the amount of money is inflating. That is the thing that inflates. People think it's raising prices. Raising prices is a result of inflation. It's not the cause. Anyway, okay, so why then does the government print money? They do it because they can steal your purchasing power, which is effectively the same as stealing money from you. They can steal your purchasing power without you realizing what just happened. That's the whole reason. Why do they print money? So you won't know they're stealing from you. Period. There's no more chapters in that story. So they don't have to get you to vote for war. They just print the money and it drains your buying power. Prices go up. But you look in your bank. I had $100 before. I have $100 now. And so this is why people end up getting very frustrated because they don't understand how they're being ripped off, but they know they're being ripped off.
Explain why CPI is such a racket.
Okay, so CPI is how you manipulate to the public that the prices really aren't going up as much as you think. So let's say inflation is 15%, but you want to make it sound like it's more like 5 or 6. You will shift the items that are in the basket of goods that you measure against. So what the government says is, hey, the consumer price index, we just take a basket of goods that we look at. Well, if it was always the same basket of goods for the last 100 years, at least you'd be able to see, oh my goodness, these prices have gone through the roof. Instead, what they do is they change out different items that make it look like inflation is lower. So if I tell you that my house is clean, but all I do is move the filth from one room to another and say, look, the living room is clean, but my bedroom is a mess. And then I want to show you that my bedroom is clean and I just dump it all back in the living room and I go, look, my bedroom is clean, but my living room is now a mess. That's effectively what they're doing, is the prices are going up and they move it around. Now, if you really want to understand how sinister this is, the reason that they manipulate that specifically in certain ways, like housing, is because people's entitlements, like once you're fixed income, they've got to raise that to match inflation. But if they can show that inflation is lower and it's 7% instead of 15%, now all of a sudden they only have to give you the bump to 7%. They don't have to go to 15%. So now they've double hit you, because not only is your purchasing power being inflated away, but they then just lied and said that it was only half. I mean, it is absolutely scandalous and outrageous. Now, here is my only beef with the Bitcoin community, whom I love. And look, I'm way invested into Bitcoin. But the thing that bothers me is they're like, but there's a life raft. Anybody can get into Bitcoin. My mom is never getting into Bitcoin. So now I have to do it on behalf of my mom. But what about all the people that don't have somebody that can do it on behalf of them? They are literally just like, well, the tsunami is going to hit. It's going to wipe out most everybody. I mean, Bitcoiners are what, 20%, 30 maybe % of the world. And who has a meaningful enough amount in Bitcoin, especially now that it's volatile? I wouldn't even encourage people to do that. So it is a tsunami that has been washing over us for decades and just eroding people's purchasing power. And the Bitcoin community says, well, they can get into Bitcoin. And it is true, but dude, most people won't. It's too complicated.
Why do you think it's so complicated to get into Bitcoin? Is this not something we could, if blockchain was the future, is it that difficult to teach it to people?
By the time you're teaching it to people, because you can't in good conscience, in my opinion, go on some hard rant recommending people to get in. What I always tell people is to look at it. Look at it, and you have to make your own decision, because I don't know I'm right. Remember, I'm fumbling in a black bag with mittens on, trying to figure out what is true. The future is not guaranteed. It is not guaranteed that Bitcoin will go up. Now, do I have enough confidence in my own life when I'm playing with my own money? Yes. But do I have enough confidence that I'm going to tell everybody else to go do it? No. So once Bitcoin becomes stable like gold, and then you can really encourage people like, hey, go check this out, then that tsunami will have long wiped away all of their purchasing power. Not all, but it's going to be some just grotesquely large amount of their purchasing power from the US dollar. So yeah, by the time it's the boring, stable asset, that moment will have passed. And the only reason you have to be a degenerate gambler putting your money into the stock market is because the government is stealing your money, and they're doing it right to your face. It's crazy.
So your point that is, it's difficult to get into Bitcoin because you may not have excess money that you could lose, but it's not difficult to set up. It's literally difficult.
It is literally difficult. You have to go to, let's just say, Coinbase. Create an account,
you can even do it on Venmo.
All that. It's gotten a lot easier. Let me not become the pariah of the Bitcoin community. It's become a lot easier, but I don't think people are being compassionate enough to how scary magical internet money looks to somebody.
It's very scary. It is very scary. It feels very virtual. It doesn't feel like the experts have backed it, which is not something
that's changing
we're used
by
to.
the day, but it's still scary. And I guess maybe my real beef is you can't let the government off the hook. Dear government, stop printing money. Like that is the only way. It's the only way.
What do you think should be done vis-a-vis AI in schools? Would you recommend that kids get into ChatGPT? I mean, there's a lot of issues with kids getting on ChatGPT because then they can't write.
Can I make your whole audience hate me real fast?
If they haven't yet.
Duct tape AI to your child's forehead. But make sure that you are getting a never-ending stream of what that AI is telling your child, because goodness gracious, it can cause real problems. But AI is a game changer. It is a game changer. And if AI is done well, and someone will do it well, of this I assure you, you will now have a PhD level intelligence with your child all the time that can explain things with whatever bias you want it to, because there will be all flavor of bias, and one bias you will love. And it will share your values if you choose wisely. It will we all indoctrinate kids. I don't know if people like that word, but it's going to indoctrinate your kids in the way that you want if you're paying attention and you choose wisely. But someone's AI is going to indoctrinate your child, but to a glorious effect if you are very thoughtful about it and really careful. But when I think about the impact AI has had on my life, like when I think I'm old enough, you used to have to go to the university library to look up a book from 70 years ago to try to find a quote and then go photocopy it. It's like now I literally just go to ChatGPT and I'm like, yo, give me a quick breakdown of this new, like, hey, tell me about modern monetary theory. And what's even crazier is I can say, okay, that sounds ridiculous. What's Ray Dalio's take on modern monetary theory? And it will do like an intellectual impression of Ray Dalio. I can even go, answer like your Ray Dalio. And I ask you this question about modern monetary theory. It is nuts. We have never seen anything like this ever before in human history. It is glorious. And so if you understand how to tame its dangers, like, hey, show me the founding fathers, Gemini, and it shows you a black woman. Okay, that's weird. You don't want that. Or maybe you do. Maybe that's the bias that you want to give to your kids. You do you. But I'm just saying this is astonishingly useful.
Well, and it's probably not going anywhere. And so I would say maybe kids that are not interacting with it now will eventually interact with it. And so ultimately they'll be behind. Would you say that that would be the case?
Do you want my darkest theory on this?
Yes, because I'm going to ask you even tougher one
in a minute. This. I have no qualms looking at the dark side. Okay, so I wrote a comic book about this. It's like 6 years ago about what's going to happen. So this is what's going to happen. The world is going to bifurcate, and you are going to have people, I'll call them the new Amish. And you will have the new Amish that are like, I am not getting a brain-computer interface. No way. I'm a Puritan. There's no technological influence on my body. I don't engage with AI. I think that it is wildly problematic and it's warping the minds of our youth, and I won't let that into my life. And it's like the first line of Dune from Herbert, paraphrase, it is illegal to make a digital mind in the form of a human intellect, right? So it's just like, we don't play that game. That's so dangerous. We're not even going there. So those will exist. And then you will have people that will implement this technology as fast as they can. And for people that think that this is a tomorrow problem, there is a guy already, I think 2 of them now, who have brain-computer interfaces that can play video games so well, they can't play against normal people because they can kill them too fast. Because they simply direct their eyes and boom, the thing knows exactly what they're trying to do. And it's what's known as aimbotting. So it is crazy. And this is like the pre-alpha version 0.0.1. So wait until this is version 25. It's going to be insane. So now the question becomes, how violent will those 2 groups be with each other? It won't be 0. So I think you're going to see some amount of stochastic violence between those 2 groups in the next, I'll give myself time, 15 years.
What are your thoughts about video games? Do we let our kids play lots and lots of video games? Or does it fry their brain and hurt them?
Okay, the answer is video games can be amazing or the worst thing ever. So I want people to think of video games like food. If you eat the right food, your life is amazing and you don't die of starvation. If you eat the wrong food, you are in trouble. If you want to give somebody cancer, make them eat the wrong foods for a really long time. If you want to know why we have childhood obesity, it's because they're eating the wrong foods. So this is a very real problem. If you let your kids indulge in the wrong video games for too much, you're going to create somebody who is addicted to a dopamine loop. Now, in full disclosure, I am a video game developer. I make video games. So obviously I have a take on this. Now, I'm already rich, so I'm not doing this for money. If anything, I've put so much money at risk because this game could fail. So this is me really believing that if you want to impact people at scale, you're going to do it through entertainment. And the most dominant form of entertainment is games. But you really have to be thoughtful about what ideas you introduce to kids. And I think a huge part of this is you have to gamify their IRL experiences. So for instance, if you have an Oura Ring or something like that, I want to take that biometric data inside the game and reflect back to the kid, hey, your character's doing really well because you walked your whatever steps, because your heart rate variability is good. So Whether players will care about that is a question mark that has yet to be answered. But those are the kinds of things that we're working on to create a loop where kids can gamify things that their parents would be like, yes, like if you can get them encouraged to do that, then I would be ecstatic.
But the vast majority of video games that I think about that, let's say, 11-year-olds play are quite violent. So would you say that that's like the junk food of video games?
I would not. So here's how I think about games. So if you look at what they do to the brain, so they found that surgeons that play video games have a higher success rate, lower complication rate than people who don't. There are going to be studies that show if you play too much, you fry the dopamine centers of your brain. And now you're just like with social media, you always have to have that next hit, and you can get addicted to it. So that's real. And people need to be very thoughtful about that. They're also going to find there is a reason that the world's most successful entrepreneur potentially ever is the top 20 ranked Diablo player in the world, Mr. Elon Musk. That's real. So there is something about the very thing that makes it addictive is that it really taps into things in the brain. So you can help kids with hand-eye coordination, goal setting, improvement. Like there are a lot of things that are very positive that you can build into games. I have used them for years as an entrepreneur. I was like, how do I find a way to put myself in what feels like a life and death situation, but is actually safe? I was like, oh my gosh, you can do it in video games. And so for that reason, I started playing a genre called first-person shooter. And because you're suddenly under attack, you're getting shot at least in the game, you could die. And I was like, okay, I am trying to tame my biology. I'm trying to, in a moment, be able to lower my heart rate, remember to breathe from my diaphragm, to stay calm. Also, another one I use it for. This is awesome because when it works, it is so incredible. Imagine you get way behind. You're losing. It seems impossible. There's no way you could come back. And I'll turn to my wife, who I play games with, and I'll say, isn't it crazy? We're still going to win. And then that thing shifts my mindset from like being on the back foot to like, okay, what's the path forward? Now, again, you have to be intentional about this stuff. If I just ate junk food all day, I'd be in terrible shape. I am super conscious about the things that I eat. And I am super conscious about the way that I engage with video games. And this is parents, put rules in your life, put rules in your kids' lives.
So what is the rule that you would put in front of kids when it comes to video games? For those of us who don't play video games like you do, just very basic rules saying yes on this, no on that.
Yeah, so I would give them a number of hours per day that they can play the game. I would think about what your value system is, what games are in alignment with those values, what games are out. So for instance, with the game that I'm building called Project Kaizen, we're really thoughtful about the value system that we're putting into the world because I think people's worldview, that box that they live in, is based on their biology, but also based on their beliefs and their values. And so Bruce Lee is the first partner. That was our launch partner because he had a huge impact on my life as a kid. And he wrote a book called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, which that was his martial art. It was really incredible. And it put me on a path of mindset. And so in our game, Bruce is like a voice in your ear. You can think of him that way. And he's, saying things that are very true, like failure will test your character. And so having elements like that, you can really build a value system in. So as a parent, just like you might watch a movie before you let your kids watch it, I think you want to engage with the stuff that they're going to play. Yeah. So because you can play a game that's violent, that's about eliminating your opponent. Does their head explode or is it, more like a laser tag type vibe?
Back to Elon Musk. So Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy are now in charge of DOGE. We had Elizabeth Warren's reaction, which is now we have two people supposedly doing the job of one.
Hilarious.
As an entrepreneur.
I had to retweet that. I was like, come on, man.
But in all seriousness, what is your reaction to what do you hope that they're going to do? What do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to utilize AI and trim the fat? And is that a monster unleashed into our government vis-a-vis AI?
We want AI. So right now, people need to understand the AI of today is not Skynet. It's not capable of becoming Skynet. There will need to be breakthroughs before we get to that point. So do I have doomer fears about AI? Yes. Are we at the point where we need to be worried about those doomer fears? No, we do not. So right now, it is patently ridiculous. You are being trolled by your legislative branch when you see a bill be 1,000 pages. That's crazy town. That the founding documents are like 1/100th that length is absolutely absurd. So what you want is AI that just goes through and says, this is the summary of the document in 2 pages. Here's all the, what do they call it, pork belly stuff. Like, here's all the stuff that people are trying to cram in. Like, did you know, like, they're going to spend $1 million on putting water moccasins on ducks? And it's like, what? So they'll be able to give you a quick summary of that stuff. I think the only way for us to get the level of transparency with the government that we need is going to be AI. So I really hope that they unleash AI. I hope that they make it very transparent so that we can all see what's going on. Because imagine being able to run things like, show me the number of screws that are plated with gold that we just purchased. And you're like, what on earth, why are we plating screws with gold? I don't know that one's real. I'm just saying it'll be things like that where you're going to be like, this is patently absurd. What do I hope they will do and what do I think they will do? I hope they will make it all transparent. I hope they will bring their very successful entrepreneur's eye to where the waste is. I hope they will cut a little too deep and then we will have to add things back. What do I think they actually will do? I think they will make a ton of recommendations. I think 10% of what they suggest will actually get through. It'll be a step in the right direction, but we won't go nearly far enough because remember, the thing that gets me really animated is that money printing is stealing from you and our budgets are so unbalanced. They literally don't have a choice. They have to steal your money.
You're kind of a health nut too. And so I'm curious, what is your reaction to MAHA? What are you hoping to see?
I love it the most. So look, I may be wrong about RFK. It's entirely possible. So I had him on the show. I researched him, I mean, at this point, probably 15 hours. Does he say things that probably end up being like a view askew? Yeah, probably. We all do. But does he seem really sincere? Yes. When his final analysis comes down, he's like, I just want to see safety trials done. That seems very reasonable to me. I think people should be skeptical of just about everything. You don't want to be paralyzed by indecision, but you should be like, well, I've been lied to a lot. A lot of things that I was told were true ended up not being true. So even if people told me it was true and they believed it, then, hey, maybe we should just be aware that things change and we shouldn't over-index on moving things a little too quickly. So he strikes me as the right guy. He's been at this for a long time. He started out in the environment. So this is not somebody that his heart is in the right place, even if he doesn't always pursue the exact right thing, which I don't think anybody does. I hope he will break some things because we are making our nation very, very sick. And he is for sure asking the right questions. And I was very encouraged by that appointment. Very. We'll see if it gets through, but very.
There are a lot of people who are very worried about the new appointments. We live in Los Angeles. I'm sure we both have some friends that are really, really, really concerned. And I think that at the end of the day, we don't want our neighbors to be freaking out. And so what would you say to them? The Bobby Kennedy appointment, Elon Musk getting involved in the government. What would you say to them to think about this period of time differently?
Okay, so my big thing is I am a big believer that the center is a destination. It's not a temperament. It is a place that one should want to end up. And the reason they should want to end up in the center is that evolution, and again, if people believe in God, he gave us this wonderful tool. So for whatever reason, evolution says, all right, I have a unique trick that I have to pull, which is I have to get a whole bunch of you to cooperate flexibly for you to become the most dominant apex predator the world has ever seen. And to do that, what I'm going to do is avoid certain problems. Problem number one, you can't leave people behind. Like you can't just let grandma and grandpa die on the wayside. You can't let that one guy who's injured right now just starve to death. It's just a bad strategy. So I'm going to make you a social creature and I'm going to make sure that you care about the people in your group because you guys are going to do a lot better together than you will individually. The problem is because I'm very wise, says God stroke nature, there will be freeloaders. And so I've created a parasite problem. And so I'm going to balance that out with other people who tend towards personal responsibility. And it is only in the tension between the two sides that you will find a sustainable path forward. If anybody needs a real down-home example, this is why men and women work so well together. My wife does not view the world the way that I view it. And in the beginning, I wanted to convince her that I was right and she should be thinking like me and it would make my life a lot easier. But then I realized, oh, wait a second. It's actually the tension between the two of us that gets us in a sane direction. And so I don't want her to think like me, and I want to respect and honor the way that she thinks, as I want her to respect and honor the way that I think. And if she's trying to make me into a woman and I'm trying to make her into a man, we've got a problem. So we laid out, this is how you think, this is how I think, and we want the tension between the two of us. And that will help us find a better decision. So if people politically did that, understanding it's the most selfish thing that you can do. So if you have a desired outcome and you want to get there, I'm telling you right now, if you get everything you want, you will drive off a cliff, because the odds are temperamentally that you're in the middle are virtually zero. You lean one way or the other. And so on a long enough timeline, you drive off a cliff. This is why America is based on this idea of you want the tension between the two sides. You want gridlock on most things. It's only the things where we have like this super agreement on things that we normally wouldn't agree on. Those move forward. And that's how you want it.
I definitely relate to that as an entrepreneur, because I won't hire people that agree with me all the time. We'll do the worst job ever, right? It's the tension that leads to the sparks. The sparks will lead to innovation. And so you kind of want that. Do you manage that in your relationship too? Do you think that a married couple can have one person vote for Trump, one vote for Kamala, and still get along?
100%. So my wife was mortified that I voted for Trump, mortified. To the point where my publicly coming out and saying that I was voting for Trump caused her to get major backlash from her community, because she also has a podcast, massive unsubscribes. And I was like, that's crazy.
They don't want to listen to her because of her husband.
How could she be married to somebody?
The tolerance left.
And so my wife came to me and was like, look, I'm really mortified that you're doing this. And I was like, all right, we got to pump the brakes a little there, homie. And so I laid out, here's the way that I see it. I don't need you to agree with me. She's British, so she can't vote. But I was like, you need to vote for the person that you really believe is going to make the world better for the most people. And if you believe that that's Kamala Harris, yeah, I'm going to love you the same. I'm not going to be mad about it. And so my whole message publicly was, hey guys, look, this is who I'm voting for. I'm sending you love, man. No matter who you're going to vote for, I'm sending you love, because I know in the world we need that tension. Now, if you are trying to do a preemptive strike, you now become my enemy. So if you are trying to assassinate one of the people, or you are trying to lie to create faux gridlock, you are now my enemy. But if you are a good intention person that's like, whatever the results come, they come, great, I'm here for that. But the thing that winds me up is this idea that this person is going to destroy America. And I wouldn't do a preemptive strike on Kamala, even though I didn't think she should be elected. And I was very happy when it didn't go her way. But if it did, I'd be like, okay, cool. Like, the people have spoken and all is good. As long as it's a free and fair election, I'm a happy camper. So that is because I distrust myself, not because I know that I've been wrong enough times. It's entirely possible, even though I feel so right, that I could be wrong. And so I want the tension.
Let's go into the holidays with some humility, knowing that you might be wrong about your candidate, and don't allow yourself to ruin your relationships over it.
And can I just throw out, just sit with the people that you love. Don't need them to be smart. Don't need them to be right. Just need them to be somebody that you love, and then love them. And I learned very early on that I felt like I had put together this set of ideas that's allowed me to be very successful. And you really quickly want to give those ideas to your family. And then you very quickly realize, oh, they're not going to use these ideas. How weird. But I love them so much. So, yeah, I don't try to preach. I just be with my family. So they can think I'm crazy, and that's fine. And to be honest, I won't even push back. So let's say that I'm at a holiday function and somebody is just neck straining, veins popping, mad at me because I have publicly backed Trump. I would say, tell me more. What part is it? What are you worried will be the outcome? What KPI will you use to measure to know whether we're actually moving towards that outcome or not? Because take someone who I respect tremendously, Sam Harris. I don't think he sees Trump clearly. Now, obviously, he's a very smart person. I think he's very well-intentioned. I don't think he's trolling people. I think he lives inside of a perspective, as I do inside mine, and his tells him something different is inside that black bag. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's very helpful for me to get really good arguments in the opposite direction, help me clarify my own thinking. And so I just want to know more. I want to understand, like, what are the metrics that you're going to pay attention to? Not rhetoric, metrics. What metrics are you going to pay attention to know that we're moving towards the thing that has the necks popping out or the veins popping out on your neck? And what I find is that if you get people to articulate that stuff, then it's like, cool, we'll watch together. Because either I might even agree with them. Yeah, if we start going in that direction, I'd be mortified too. And so now we're on the same team. Now we're looking at results, which is my whole life theory is if you know your goal and your goal is honorable, then cool. Now we both want to get to the same place.
How do you apply that advice to people who believe that Trump can do no wrong, or I guess hope that Trump will do no wrong?
So some of this is, again, some people are low information voters. They are in a tribe. They are thinking from emotion. They are not going to help people find the most predictive belief system. And I'm all about what is predictive, what actually allows me to go, that's going to happen and that's going to cause this consequence, because then I can win, right? If I know the consequence one step ahead, I can bet on it financially. I can move my company. I can start doing social media before anybody else. I can launch a podcast when it's still small, right? There's all kinds of things you can do when you're like, I don't care if I'm right. I just want to know what the right answer is. And so I'm just trying to go, that action will lead to, and then find the smartest voices from different angles, sides that will give me something I can synthesize and then use the back test. Okay, if I were to believe that, let me look backwards and see, believing that, could I have predicted this, 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 and this? And if it passes the back test, then you at least have reason to be relatively confident that you're moving in the right direction. But if somebody wants to be Team Trump, I just put them in a box in my mind that says they're Team Trump. They are not Team Predictive Validity.
Knowing that we have this horseshoe, right? We have these extremes in our country, and most of them percolate up on social media. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
It's going to be a mixed bag. There's no doubt. I don't know how much America will pull apart, but once you understand everything's about the economy, then if we don't solve the economy, there will be an amount of violence. How far the violence goes, will it be 2020? Maybe that would be great. If that's as far as things get over the next 15, 20 years, it'd be ecstatic. But the odds are, quite literally the odds are, that every time an empire declines and their currency stops being the reserve currency, there's a war. So it happens something like 65 to 70% of the time. So this is way better than chance. So we are almost certainly hurtling towards a world war. It will probably be
because of the economy.
Because of the economy, yeah. Because we won't go quietly. America is declining. You just look at the stats. So is it possible that Trump reverses it? For a while, but here's the reality. Every single reserve currency through all of human history, they've all gone away. All of them. So what are the odds that we're the first one that beats it? Effectively zero. People can't stop themselves from printing money. They just can't. So this is the hard times make strong men make good times make weak men, and weak men print money. And therein lies the problem. And they just print until people finally go, we have a whole lot of debt. We've hyperinflated the currency. And now the only thing left is to fight about it. And so while that happens, you get a rising superpower. Right now, China is the rising superpower. Now we've got a minute because they've damaged their own economy. And so who will get out of it faster? Will we be able to reverse our malaise faster than they can reverse theirs? But this ain't the 1980s, man. The 1980s felt different. Like when we suddenly won the Cold War, it was like, yo, this feels good. We're not there. We're not that country right now. So I want to believe that we can become that country again, but we're not that country today. So we'll see.
What is your final action item that one should do right now after hearing about all this different feedback that you've given to us?
Can I give them two things?
Two things.
Okay. Control your emotions. Or said another way, distrust your emotions. Don't act on them. Think from first principles. If you do those two things, you won't recognize your life in 60 days.
Thank you, Tom. Super interesting.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.